Well, welcome to the 700 Club. The wind at their backs. Republicans have a strong gust blowing them into the midterm elections. Cancel culture, woke corporations, big tech and media shutdowns. These and other progressive policies could leave the president's party high and dry. So how big a hit could the Democrats take this go-round? Jennifer Wishon has more.
Conventional wisdom tells us the party not in the White House, in this case Republican, has a major advantage in the midterms. Add that to lingering frustrations over the 2020 election with an extreme liberal agenda coming out of Washington. And many analysts say Republicans are heading into November 2022 with a steady wind at their backs. In the evenly divided Senate, 20 Republican and 14 Democratic seats are up for grabs. Every House seat is on the ballot, where Democrats hold a slim 8-seat advantage. 5 seats are currently vacant. Historically, the party in the White House loses an average of 26 seats in the midterm, and the last 2 Democratic presidents took an even greater midterm shellacking. In 1994, President Clinton lost 52 House and 8 Senate seats to Newt Gingrich's contract with America. And in 2010, fueled by the Tea Party movement, Republicans scored 63 House and 6 Senate seats during President Obama's first midterm. CBN News senior editor John Waggy says President Biden could face a similar, if not worse, fate.
You've got the cancel culture. You've got woke corporations telling people how to think. You've got big tech and media outlets basically telling people, if you believe this about COVID or if you believe this about the election, we're just going to shut you down. And you combine all that, and it's producing a pretty heady brew of anger right now.
This as Democrats push an agenda aimed at transforming America. What's at stake? One bill critics say would ensure a Democratic majority. H.R. 1, or the For the People Act, is a sweeping federal elections bill that would steamroll state laws, mandate early voting, and outlaw voter ID requirements.
This legislation is there to protect the right to vote, to remove obstacles of participation.
This bill makes elections less trustworthy, not more. And trust is everything.
Another measure that's passed the House but doesn't have the votes to pass a Senate filibuster is a push to make the District of Columbia a state. That would add 2 likely Democratic senators, creating a steep bar for Republicans to overcome. There's also the Equality Act, a bill that expands LGBT rights at the expense of biblical beliefs. Waggy says this all plays into predictions the electorate is ready to apply the brakes.
People are beginning to mobilize, and they're starting to say, if we want to keep the republic the way we understand the republic, we're going to have to get involved ourselves.
Another advantage for Team GOP, redistricting, or the redrawing of congressional lines after the census. Since Republicans control more state houses across the country, they'll be in charge of crafting more districts and can draw lines favorable to their party. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Thanks, Jennifer. Well, Chief CBN political analyst David Brody is joining us now. And David, the census is helping Republicans. Can you tell us how those new seats are being allocated?
Sure, Pat. Most likely Republicans are going to, in essence, pick up 7 seats. What do I mean by that? I don't mean actually win those 7 seats, but the census is, in essence, putting those 7 seats in more of a Republican-friendly territory. So, for example, Texas will have 2 seats. Florida, North Carolina will gain an extra House seat. So you put it all together, and once again, another reason why it looks very promising that Republicans will take back the House in 2022. As a matter of fact, I was speaking to House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy just recently, and he told me straight out, he said, we're going to win. We're going to win the House. They're very confident. I said on a scale of 1 to 10, he gave me the 10. So they feel confident. We'll see. There's a lot of different factors involved here, but I will say this. Look into the suburbs, Pat, as we move towards 2022. Critical race theory has been a big deal, obviously, in, for example, the suburbs and the exurbs of the D.C. area and, of course, down in Georgia and a lot of swing states. But beyond just critical race theory, you have a lot of these female sports transgender bills that many governors are signing. It's that type of stuff that just doesn't play well in the suburbs, and that could give Republicans a much-needed advantage as well. And remember, Donald Trump will be speaking. He'll go around the country, but he won't be on the ballot. So they'll have the benefit, in a way, of getting the Trump energy without Trump physically being on the ballot.
Well, you know, the House is trying to push that, what's H.R. 1, which would federalize elections. And the president's putting Vice President Harris to push it through. What's the chance of that going through Congress?
Very, very slim. As a matter of fact, before that could even get through Congress, what they're going to have to do, Pat, as you know, is change the filibuster rules. In other words, this is not going to have 60 votes to pass this voting rights legislation, so they're going to need 50. The only way you do that is you change the legislative filibuster, and that means Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, two Democrats, center-left, if you will be the key to all of this. So as much as Kamala Harris is, quote, in charge of voting rights legislation and kind of working it through that way, she's not in charge. Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema are the ones in charge. Biden might as well have just said that. Say, hey, look, Kyrsten Sinema, Joe Manchin, what are you going to do? Because if you decide to change the filibuster, then the rest of the Democrat Party is on board. Those are the two senators basically keeping all of this at bay. It's funny, though, Pat, that Kamala Harris is being put, first in charge of fixing the border crisis, now fixing or trying to steamroll the voting rights legislation. Very, very difficult task. I mean, I'm not sure if Joe Biden is going to put her in charge of solving world peace next. I mean, it's very difficult.
Is that because Joe can't handle it? I mean, is he really out of it or not?
Well, I got to tell you, evidence every single day suggests you have to wonder exactly what's going on. And look, this is a dicey situation here. And what I mean by that is that it's hard for conservatives to criticize Joe Biden so much on the flubs, because what used to be a ha-ha Joe Biden flub decades ago, now with his age and the flubs, you get a sense that you wonder kind of where he's at specifically. The White House says they're going to release not just medical records, but mental health evaluations. We have not seen that yet, but I think that is a growing storyline as well, Pat.
Last question, your gut feeling. How do you think it's going to go? You think it's going to be a Republican sweep of the House?
I think the House looks very, very promising. So I'm going to kind of go with that asterisk of yes. John Waggy will take the asterisk away, but I'll put the asterisk on it. I will say this, the Senate, a bit different, Pat. Obviously, we know it's a 50-50 split. There are about 8 competitive Senate races, and you've got 3 Republicans retiring. You've got Richard Burr down in North Carolina. You've got Rob Portman in Ohio, and Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania. So Republicans are a bit on the defensive there. Democrats have their issues, too, in Arizona and Nevada. But we'll wait to see how that all shakes out.
Thanks, David. Let's go back to Ephraim for other news.
Pat, the Biden administration is suspending oil and gas leases in Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge to study the environmental impact of drilling there. The action reverses a Trump-era decision to allow drilling in the region. The 19.6 million acre territory has been the focus of a decades-long battle between Republican and Democrat leadership, with the GOP wanting to tap the resources of the oil-rich area, while Democrats cite environmental concerns. A portion of the oil revenue generated in Alaska goes to a permanent fund which provides a yearly dividend check for residents there. Pat?
Well, you might understand the governor of that state of Alaska desperately wants this drilling. And the thought is a few holes in the ground is not going to destroy the permafrost. And they desperately need that oil, as the huge find that they had up closer to the Arctic Sea is running down. The payment that's been made to the citizens of Alaska is diminishing, and they were just hated. But this is one more attack by Biden at the oil and gas industry. He's gone after coal, and he certainly went after the Keystone pipeline. Another pipeline is under attack by him, and we're paying a lot of money because of these Green New Deal concepts. Ephraim?
Pat, a second cyber attack in less than a month shut down a major U.S. company. JBS is the second largest producer of beef, pork, and chicken in the U.S. Managers expect to get most of their facilities back up and running today. Tuesday, a ransomware attack shut down processing plants in 8 states, Canada, and Australia. There is no word yet if the stoppage will affect the meat supply and prices. The company blames a criminal group likely based in Russia. This comes on the heels of last month's cyber attack on the Colonial Gas pipeline by a Russia-based cyber gang. That led to widespread fuel shortages in the southeast.
I don't think we've seen a period of this kind of sort of high-intensity cyber operations from Russian soil directed against a variety of different U.S. targets, arguably ever.
The White House is now engaging directly with the Russian government on the issue. President Biden and Vladimir Putin are set to meet in Geneva later this month. Pat?
Thank you very much. I've asked our news staff to check on something that I think is much more important, and that is the critical infrastructure dealing with our electric supply. And we're facing the possibility of a mass solar ejection that would cripple our grid all over the country and put us in darkness. And the same hackers that have been hacking at points along the way, if they went after the total grid, it would be disastrous to our country. So what I'm asking our news in the next several days, we want to do a comprehensive report about what it would take. It just would cost a small amount of money to harden the grid so that we wouldn't be subject. But without question, solar ejections, the thing coming out of sunspots, is at the height of the season right now. And this is a danger that's far, far greater than anything we have faced so far. Ephraim?
Pat, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a bill into law Tuesday banning transgender athletes from competing in women's and girls' sports in public schools. The Republican leader said it protects the fairness and integrity of women's athletics.
We've seen, particularly in other states, you would have these blatantly unfair track races and all these other things where these girls train and then they end up not being able to advance to compete in state or what have you.
The bill also gives biologically female athletes the right to take civil action if they are discriminated against or denied opportunities. This comes as President Biden recognized Pride Month Wednesday, stating he will, quote, not rest until gay, lesbian, and transgender Americans have full equality under the law. Religious freedom advocates are awaiting a major ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court this month. It pits faith-based foster agencies against LGBTQ advocates. Senior National Affairs correspondent Heather Sells has more.
The Supreme Court will decide the future of Philadelphia's Catholic Social Services Agency, which is asking to follow the church's teaching and not partner with same-sex or unmarried couples. It's a high-stakes religious liberty fight.
So what we are contending for in this case is that Catholic social services have an equal right to participate in the public square. And the way that they are participating in the public square is by serving the most needy amongst us, which are children without homes.
And the Supreme Court told us when they said that the Constitution requires same-sex marriage that, of course, the law will protect those who have a different view in their religious or their moral conscience. But in many cases, that's not happening.
But LGBTQ advocates like the Human Rights Campaign say the case is about discrimination, and a decision against the city of Philadelphia would open a, quote, Pandora's box for future discrimination. Andrew Walker, a professor of ethics at Southern Baptist Theological Seminary and a fellow at the Ethics and Public Policy Center, disagrees.
Discrimination implies locking people out, a class of people out, from an entire industry. And that's not what's going on. What's going on in Fulton versus Philadelphia is you have one adoption agency that is wanting to operate according to its beliefs.
Catholic Social Services never actually turned away any gay couples, and there's dozens of Philadelphia foster agencies that work with them. So Regent Law Professor Brad Jacobs says they can't ultimately lose.
They can adopt either way. They don't need Catholic Social Services. This is, on their part, an effort to basically stamp out anyone who doesn't agree with their worldview.
Court watchers are closely watching the case with its hot-button issues in the hands of a new conservative majority.
We have a Supreme Court that is probably for the first time as pro-religious liberty in its design as it has been in perhaps the history of the Supreme Court.
The big question with Fulton is how broadly will the justices rule? They could revisit a 1990 case that decimated the free exercise of religion and provide a substantial win for people of faith. Or they could issue a narrow ruling which would do little to advance either side. Heather Sells, CBN News.
And again, we await the court's ruling. Pat?
Well, it's happening in the state. As I understand, the state of Virginia, they've just issued a mandate that if a child wants to be a he and then 3 or 4 months later decides he wants to be a she, and we've got to recognize the designation and not identify him or her in any particular fashion that will in any way discriminate against him. And this is a tough call. And we're talking about state after state. And of course, the citizens are getting outraged at this nonsense, because it is nonsense, but it's being imposed on the people against their will. And there's going to be a reaction. And it seems like to me, in the state of Virginia, it's going to take place in a couple of weeks. In the rest of the country, it's going to take place in about 5 months. But we're going to see a cosmic shift in politics, I believe, to prevent us from becoming overcome by socialists, because we didn't vote in a bunch of socialists. The American people don't want socialism. And that's what's being imposed upon them, and they don't want it.